The air in the office was stale, recycling the same cold oxygen that we had been breathing for hours. It smelled faintly of burned coffee and ozone. I stood in front of Corin's desk, my hands trembling violently by my sides. I wasn't nervous, I was terrified. In my grip, I held the hospice report that felt heavier than a brick. The paper crinkled under my sweating fingers, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "My father has 24 hours, Corin," I said, my voice shaking. "I need to go now." Corin didn't even look up. He was stabbing a plastic fork into his container of Caesar salad, searching for a piece of chicken. The sound of the plastic scraping against the container was the only noise in the room. He chewed slowly, deliberately, before speaking. "It is blackout week for the server migration, Verity. You know the rules. We cannot have the lead admin vanish into thin air." He took another bite, a piece of lettuce hanging from his lip. "Bereavement leave requires a death certificate. That is the policy. Come back when he is actually dead." The room spun. The cruelty was so casual, so mundane, as if he had just denied a request for a new stapler. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. Something inside me simply snapped, quiet and clean. I reached up, unclipped my ID badge from my lanyard, and dropped it right into his salad. The creamy dressing splashed onto his silk tie. "Consider this my immediate resignation. Good luck with the migration." I turned and walked out. As I hit the elevator button, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my mom. I answered, and her silence told me everything. Dad was gone. My name is Verity. For 7 years, I was the unseen ghost in the machine of this company. I was the IT director on paper, but in reality, I was the keeper of secrets. I was the only person in the entire building of 300 employees who knew how to speak to the beast. The beast was our legacy mainframe. It was a massive, ancient server system from 2017 that handled millions of dollars in transactions every single day. It was the heart of the company, pumping money through its digital veins, but it was old and temperamental. It required a specific manual, handshake protocol every 48 hours. This wasn't just a password you typed in. It was a rolling encryption key that had to be generated by a physical token and confirmed with a biometric scan. My biometric scan, my thumbprint. 2 years ago, I sat in this very office and begged Alaric, the CEO, to pay for a secondary admin license. It would have allowed someone else to learn the handshake. It cost $10,000. Alaric had laughed, waving his hand as if swatting a fly. 10,000? You are never sick, Verity. You are part of the furniture. Why would we waste the money on a backup for a backup? He refused to pay. He saved $10,000 that day. He didn't know it then, but that decision was about to cost him his entire empire. I was the only key, and I had just walked out the door forever. I drove straight to my childhood home, the road blurring through my hot tears. The grief was a physical weight, heavy on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The world felt gray and distant, like I was watching it through dirty glass. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw my mother's car parked at an angle. I turned my phone off immediately. I didn't want to hear from the world. I needed to be a daughter, not an IT director. Back at the office, the invisible countdown had already begun. The server had a 48-hour timer. If it didn't receive the handshake, it would assume the system was compromised. Nobody noticed I was gone, not really. They were too busy gossiping about my dramatic exit. I learned later that Corin had laughed about it in the break room. He stood there, wiping salad dressing off his tie with a napkin, telling the team, "She is just emotional. She will be back in 2 days begging for her job. When she tries to log in remotely, deny her access until she apologizes to me." He thought he was punishing me. He thought he held the power. He didn't understand that by cutting off my access, he wasn't locking me out. He was locking himself in with a ticking time bomb. The silence in the server room was deceiving. The clock was ticking down, second by second. 24 hours had passed. I was sitting at my parents' kitchen table, surrounded by old photos, helping my mom plan the funeral. It felt surreal to choose flowers when my chest felt so empty. We looked at pictures of Dad when he was young, sitting at his computer. He was the one who taught me everything. At the office, the first cracks were appearing. Bennett, a junior developer who I had mentored, was the first to notice. He was a good kid, sharp and observant. He saw a latency spike on the dashboard. The system was slowing down, asking for the daily handshake. Bennett went straight to Corin's office, clutching his tablet. "We need Verity," Bennett said, pointing at the red flashing light on his screen. "The system is flagging a security timeout. It's asking for the biometric confirmation. It's getting aggressive." Corin didn't even look away from his computer screen. He waved Bennett off with a scoff. "She is playing games. We don't need her. We have the master passwords in the fireproof safe. Just use those. Stop bothering me with minor issues." Bennett hesitated, shifting his weight. "But sir, the token." "Just use the passwords," Corin shouted, slamming his hand on the desk. Corin didn't understand. He thought technology was just typing words into a box. He didn't understand that a password is useless without the physical key. He was about to try and open a bank vault with a car key, and the system was watching him do it. Corin marched into the server room, confident and arrogant. He held the emergency sheet that I had typed up and left in the safe 3 years ago. The room was cold, humming with the sound of fans. He sat at the main terminal and cracked his knuckles, looking around at the staff watching him. "Watch and learn," he told Bennett. "This is how you handle a machine." He typed in the admin password. He hit enter with a flourish. The screen didn't open the dashboard. Instead, it turned a bright, angry red. Text flashed across the monitor: "Access DENIED. Token required." "Stupid machine," Corin muttered, his face flushing. He typed it in again, and then a third time, slamming the keys harder. That was the fatal mistake. The system was programmed to detect brute force hacking attempts. 3 failed entries without the biometric token signaled an attack. The system didn't just lock the door, it welded it shut. The DEFCON 4 protocol initiated instantly. The hum of the servers changed pitch, becoming a low, defensive growl. The lights on the tower racks switched from green to pulsing orange. Corin stared at the screen, confused. Why is it doing that? He had just triggered the digital equivalent of a castle, raising its drawbridge and pouring boiling oil into the moat. He had no idea what he had done. I finally turned my phone on to call the florist. The moment the signal connected, my phone vibrated so hard it nearly fell off the table. It buzzed continuously for a full minute. Notifications flooded the screen. 50 missed calls, 20 voicemails, dozens of text messages. They were all from Corin. I sat there and read them, feeling a cold detachment. They started angry. "Where are you? Stop playing games. Pick up the phone." Then they became threatening. "You are in violation of your contract. I will sue you if you don't answer. This is your final warning." He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't apologizing for denying me leave to be with my dying father. He was threatening me. He was trying to bully me into fixing his mistake. He still thought I was his subordinate. I felt a cold rage settle over my grief. I didn't type a response. I didn't call him back. I opened my photo gallery and selected one single image, a photo of my father's obituary that we had just drafted. I sent it to Corin. Then I pressed the block contact button. I put the phone down and went back to helping my mother choose the casket. He had made his choice. Now he had to live with it. The panic at the office had reached the top floor. Alaric, the CEO, flew in from his vacation home, his face red with stress. The clients were calling. Transactions were failing. The money had stopped flowing. The company was bleeding cash. Alaric didn't call me. He didn't want to admit he was wrong. Instead, he hired a replacement. He brought in Lowell, a self-proclaimed cybersecurity expert who charged $500 an hour. Lowell walked into the server room wearing an expensive suit, looking down his nose at everything. He looked at the legacy code on the monitors and sneered. "This is ancient," Lowell said, laughing. "Who built this? A dinosaur." "Verity maintained it," Bennett said quietly from the corner. "Well, Verity was just a glorified secretary," Lowell mocked, rolling up his sleeves. I am an engineer. I can bypass the token requirement by rewriting the root directory. It's easy. Bennett stepped forward, alarmed. Verity said never touch the root. If you mess with the core code, the system might react. Lowell ignored him. He sat down and started typing rapidly. I know what I'm doing, kid. Watch a master at work. He was treating open-heart surgery like a haircut. He was about to cut the main artery because he was too arrogant to look at the patient's chart. It was the day of the funeral. The sky was gray, and a steady, cold rain was falling. We stood at the graveside, a small group of family and friends huddled under black umbrellas. I felt hollowed out, like a shell. The priest was speaking about my father's kindness, but I could barely hear him over the sound of the rain hitting the coffin. Then, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I looked up. A sleek black town car had pulled up right to the cemetery gates. The engine cut off. The door opened and Corin stepped out. He wasn't wearing a coat. He was holding a laptop. He walked past the other mourners, stepping over the wet grass, his shoes sinking into the mud. For a split second, I thought, maybe he is here to pay respects. Maybe he has a heart. I was wrong. He walked right up to the coffin, ignoring the priest, ignoring my weeping mother. He shoved the open laptop toward me. Verity, he said, his voice breathless and desperate. I need you to place your thumb on this scanner right now. Alaric is losing his mind. We are losing clients. The world seemed to stop. The disrespect was so massive, so absolute, that I couldn't comprehend it. He had interrupted my father's burial to get a fingerprint. The audacity of it broke something inside me. My brother, who is a large man and very protective, stepped forward. His fists were clenched, and his face was purple with rage. He was ready to punch Corin into the open ground. I put a hand on my brother's chest to stop him. No, I said softly. Don't give him the satisfaction. I turned to Corin. I looked him dead in the eye. The rain was dripping off his nose onto the laptop keyboard. He looked pathetic, but his eyes were still arrogant. You are trespassing on sacred ground, I said. My voice was steady, colder than the rain. Corin sneered, desperation making him ugly. And you are destroying company property by withholding your access. Scan your thumb, or so help me I will have the police here in 10 minutes. I reached out and took the laptop from his hands. He smiled, thinking he had won. I didn't scan my thumb. Instead, I turned and dropped the laptop into a deep, muddy puddle next to the grave path. It splashed, and the screen flickered and died. Leave, I said. Now. Corin stared at the submerged computer, then at me. He saw the look in my brother's eyes. He turned and ran back to the car, slipping on the wet grass as he fled. That night, the grief was mixed with anxiety. I sat in my living room, staring at the wall. A knock came at the door. It wasn't a friend. It was a courier. He handed me a thick envelope. You've been served. I opened it. It was a lawsuit. The company was suing me for corporate sabotage, extortion, and gross negligence. They were claiming damages of $2 million. They claimed I had changed the passwords before I left. They claimed I had booby-trapped the system out of spite. The text was filled with lies. It painted me as a villain who had planned this destruction for months. I didn't change a single thing. I hadn't touched the code. I just wasn't there to press the button. The irony was painful. If they had treated me with even a tiny amount of human decency, if they had just let me grieve, I would have helped them. I would have logged in remotely for free. Now, they had declared war. I picked up my phone and called Thayer. He was an old friend from college, a shark of a lawyer who hated corporate bullies. Thayer, I said, I need you. They just sued me for my dad's funeral. Back at the office, things were going from bad to catastrophic. Lowell, the expensive expert, had tried to rewrite the root directory. He thought he could outsmart the code. When he executed his code, the system didn't unlock. It panicked. The legacy mainframe interpreted the code change as a foreign virus attack. The beast woke up and defended itself. It initiated the nuclear option. This was a protocol designed to protect client privacy in case of a total breach. The server encrypted all client data. Every name, every transaction, every dollar amount was scrambled into random characters. The screens turned black, then filled with gibberish. "What did you do?" Bennett yelled, staring at the screens in horror. I just tried to bypass the lock," Lowell stammered, his face pale. "It wasn't supposed to do this." "You triggered the encryption," Bennett shouted. "It's all gone. Nobody can see the data now, not us, not the clients, not even Verity." The data wasn't deleted, but it was locked inside a mathematical vault that no one had the key to. The business was effectively frozen. They were flying a plane, and the windows had just been painted black. The fallout was instant. Eamon, the CEO of the company's biggest client, called Alaric directly. Eamon was a terrifying man who didn't accept excuses. He ran a logistics empire that relied on our software. Alaric, Eamon's voice boomed over the speakerphone in the executive office. "My dashboard is blank. I cannot process payments. I have trucks sitting in depots because they can't get their routing numbers. I am losing $50,000 an hour." Alaric was shaking. He looked at Corin, his eyes wild with panic. We are fixing it, Eamon, just a glitch." "Fix it, or I sue you for breach of contract and take every penny you have," Eamon growled. "You have 1 hour." The line went dead. Alaric screamed at Corin. "Fix this, why isn't it fixed?" Corin, ever the coward, pointed his finger at the empty chair where I used to sit. "It is Verity. She booby-trapped it. She must have set a timer to destroy us." "Then get her back," Alaric screamed, throwing a stapler against the wall. "I don't care about the lawsuit. Get her back in here." They were scrambling like rats on a sinking ship, blaming the only person who knew how to plug the hole. They still didn't understand that they were the ones who had drilled it. I was at home, drinking tea that had gone cold. The lawsuit was spread out on the table. I was reading through the technical claims they had made against me. They were nonsense. Then I remembered something, a specific detail about the biometric token. The scanner wasn't just a piece of hardware. It was linked to an external vendor service, a third-party security firm that verified the identity in the cloud. It was a subscription service. If the company stopped paying that vendor, the token would deactivate. I sat up straight. I remembered putting an invoice on Corin's desk last month. It was the renewal for the security service. It was expensive, and Corin hated expensive things. He always complained that it cost too much money. I wondered, did Corin pay the renewal invoice? Or did he toss it in the trash like he did with anything he didn't understand? My heart started to race. If the subscription had lapsed, the problem was much, much worse than they realized. It wasn't just a locked door. The house might have vanished. I needed to verify this immediately. I rushed to my laptop. I still had access to my personal email archives. I had a habit of BCCing myself on every important invoice I sent to HR, exactly for moments like this. Corin had a habit of losing paperwork that required him to spend budget money. I searched security vendor. There it was. Subject, final notice, security vendor. Date, 2 weeks ago. Marked, urgent. I opened the thread. I had sent it to Corin with a note. "This must be paid by the 1st or the tokens stop working. This is critical." I scrolled down to see his reply. My stomach dropped. Corin's reply was short and dismissive. "Stop bothering me with spam, Verity. We are over budget. We will pay it next quarter. Stop spending money we don't have." I stared at the screen. I didn't kill the server. I didn't lock the system. Corin's cheapness did. He had canceled the security clearance for the entire company because he wanted to save a few dollars. He had pulled the plug on his own life support. My phone rang. It was Alaric. I almost didn't answer, but Thayer, my lawyer, nodded at me from across the table. "Answer it. Put it on speaker. Let's hear them beg." "Hello," I said. "Verity," Alaric's voice was different. It wasn't the booming voice of a CEO. It was soft, trembling. "Verity, please, we are bleeding. The clients are leaving. Name your price, anything." I looked at Thayer. He scribbled a note on a legal pad, face to face, neutral ground. "I will meet you," I said. But not at the office. I'm not setting foot in that building as an employee ever again. Where? Alaric asked immediately. I'll come to you. The coffee shop on 4th Street. In 1 hour. Bring Corin. Corin, why? Because he needs to hear this, I said. And bring a pen. I hung up. The power dynamic had shifted completely. I wasn't the employee begging for leave anymore. I was the only lifeline they had left. They were drowning, and I was the only one with a rope. The coffee shop was quiet. I sat in a booth with Thayer beside me. Alaric and Corin walked in. They looked terrible. Alaric had dark circles under his eyes. Corin looked pale and sweaty, clutching his briefcase like a shield. His suit was rumpled, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. They sat opposite us. Alaric didn't waste time. Just give us the password, he begged. We will drop the lawsuit. We will give you a bonus. Just unlock it. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch. I watched Corin squirm. There is no password, I said calmly. Don't lie, Corin snapped, hitting the table. You changed it. You locked us out. The system is waiting for a token authentication from the third-party vendor, I explained, ignoring his outburst. So use your token, Corin yelled. Come to the office and press your thumb on the glass. That is all we need. I can't, I replied. My thumb won't work, neither will yours, neither will anyone's. Why? Alaric asked. Because you canceled the subscription, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed email thread. I slid it across the table. Alaric picked it up. His eyes scanned the page. He saw the invoice marked urgent. Then he saw Corin's reply calling the critical security invoice spam. Alaric lowered the paper slowly. He turned his head to look at Corin. The look on his face was terrifying. It was the look of a man realizing he had been betrayed by an idiot. You, Alaric whispered, you stopped paying the security license. Corin stammered, shrinking back in his seat. I was saving budget. Verity sends so many invoices, I thought it was just unnecessary software. She spends too much. I thought we could pay it later. It was the key to the front door, I said. And because you didn't pay it, the vendor closed the account. Alaric put his head in his hands. So, we just pay it. Can we pay it now and turn it back on? I'll write a check right now. It gets worse, I said. The table went deadly silent. The clatter of coffee cups in the background seemed to fade away. What do you mean? Alaric asked, his voice barely a whisper. The security protocol for that vendor is strict, I said. If the subscription lapses for more than 48 hours, they assume the client has gone out of business or the hardware was stolen. As a safety measure against hacking, they automatically wipe the encryption keys from their cloud. I leaned forward. That happened 2 hours ago. The keys are gone, Alaric. The data on your server isn't just locked behind a door. The key to that door has been disintegrated. The data is unrecognizable garbage now. You can't decrypt it. The vendor deleted the match. Corin looked like he was going to be sick. No, that can't be right. It is, I said. I read the contract, you didn't. The realization hit them like a physical blow. The company wasn't just paused. It was erased. The millions of dollars in transaction data were effectively gone. Alaric stood up, knocking his chair over. People in the coffee shop turned to stare. He didn't care. Is there a backup? He demanded. Tell me there is a backup. Yes, I said. I performed a manual tape backup every Friday. I didn't trust the cloud completely. I kept physical tapes. Alaric let out a breath, a sound of pure relief. He looked like a drowning man who had found air. Oh, thank God. Where is it? We can restore from the tapes. We just lose a few days of data. It is in the fireproof safe in my office, I said. Alaric turned to Corin. We checked the safe. You told me it was empty. Corin's face went from pale to gray. He started to shake his head. Why was the safe empty, Corin? I asked. I knew the answer, but I wanted Alaric to hear him say it. I wanted the truth to be spoken. It's empty, I said, answering for him when he couldn't speak, because Corin ordered the cleaning crew to toss all the junk in my office the day I left. He wanted to make room for Lowell. Corin stayed silent, staring at the table, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. "You threw the backup tapes in the dumpster," Alaric screamed. It was a guttural sound. I pulled out my phone. "I called Bennett before I came here. He confirmed it. He saw the janitor taking out a box of black tapes. Bennett asked about them, and the janitor said Corin told him they were old cassette tapes and to trash them. The backup wasn't lost in a fire. It wasn't stolen by hackers. It was sitting in a landfill somewhere because the HR manager wanted a cleaner office for the new guy." Alaric looked at Corin with pure hatred. "You destroyed the company. You threw our entire history in the trash because you are petty." Alaric sat down heavily. He looked like he was having a stroke. His hands were gripping the table edge so hard his knuckles were white. "Is there any way at all to recover the data?" I took another sip of coffee. I let them suffer for a moment. They deserved to feel the panic I felt when they told me I couldn't say goodbye to my dad. "There is one way, but it is difficult." Alaric's head snapped up. "What? Anything?" "The original source code from 2017, I said. "The core architecture has a backdoor developer key. It was hard-coded into the system before the security vendor was even hired. It bypasses the token. It unlocks everything." "Who has it?" Alaric asked. "Lowell couldn't find it." "Lowell is an idiot," I said. "Only the original architect knows the key. It wasn't written in the digital documentation." "Who is the architect?" Alaric asked. "My father," I said. "The man you wouldn't let me bury." The table went silent again. The irony hung in the air, thick and suffocating. My father had written the original code for this company 10 years ago as a consultant. That was how I got the job. I had inherited his position and his notes. "He kept a notebook," I said softly. "He was old school. He wrote his master keys on paper. He kept a black notebook with every backdoor he ever built. It's in his study at my mother's house. I saw it this morning." Alaric stared at me. The man whose death he had mocked was now the only person who could save him. The man he wouldn't let me grieve for was holding the keys to the kingdom from beyond the grave. "And you have access to it?" Alaric asked. "I do," I said. "It is sitting on his desk." "Go get it," Corin yelled, finding his voice again. "Go get the notebook right now. What are you waiting for?" I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. "You denied me leave to be with him. You harassed me at his funeral. You sued me. You threw my reputation in the mud. And now you want his notebook." "I will give you $1 million, Alaric said. "Cash, today, just go get it." "No," I said. $2 million. "No," I said. "I don't want your money. I want the IP." "The what?" "The intellectual property," I said. "I want full ownership of the software. I want the system my father built. You sign the rights over to me. I become the owner of the platform. You can license it back from me." "That's blackmail," Corin shouted. "That's business," I replied, quoting Alaric's own words back to him. "You have no product without me. You have a blank screen and a lawsuit from Eamon. If you don't sign, you go bankrupt by tomorrow morning." Alaric looked at Corin, then at me. He looked at the lawsuit I had placed on the table. He knew he was beaten. He had no cards left to play. "Thayer has the papers ready," I said, nodding to my lawyer. Thayer pulled a contract out of his briefcase. It transferred all rights of the software code to me, Verity. Alaric took the pen. His hand shook, but he signed the papers right there on the coffee table. He sold me the rights to the software to save his company from immediate death. I watched the ink dry. I was now the owner of the system I had served for 7 years. I picked up my phone and texted my mom. "Check Dad's desk. Top drawer, black notebook. Look for the page marked The Beast." A minute later, she replied with a photo of the page. The code was there. A string of numbers and letters written in my father's messy handwriting. We went back to the office. The mood was grim. I walked into the server room, ignoring Lowell, who was sitting in the corner looking defeated. I sat at the terminal. I didn't need a token. I typed in the code from my father's notebook. Enter. The screen flashed. The red Access D and IED box disappeared. The green progress bar appeared. System restore initiated. The data began to unspool, the encryption melting away. The dashboard lit up. The money started flowing again. Alaric let out a sob of relief. Then he turned to Corin. "Get out." "Alaric, please." "Get out," Alaric roared. "Security, drag him out." 2 guards grabbed Corin and marched him out of the building. He didn't even get to pack his box. I resigned as an employee 5 minutes later. Then, I immediately re-signed the new contract Thayer had drafted. I was now an external consultant. My rate was 5 times my old salary, and I owned the code they ran on. That evening, I visited my dad's grave. The rain had stopped. I placed a copy of the contract on the damp soil. "You built it, Dad." I whispered, "and now we own it." Justice served.